The year is 253 AD, and the Roman world is in turmoil. The Goths terrorize the Danube, the Germans pressure their own frontiers, internal civil war and plague push the Roman state to its limits, and to the far east, the Sassanids encroach on Roman lands. Two men, father and son, after getting their own share of Roman blood spilled, rise to the purple in an attempt to control the situation, only to both fall victims to the very same chaotic times they tried to put an end to. These men were Gallienus and Valerian. Their coins are among some of the most common out there, and today we will take a look at some of the coins struck by these desperate men in these desperate times. Let's go! Gallienus is a bit of a joke in Roman numismatics. His coins are incredibly common, most of them very crude and of poor artistic quality, and with so many great looking coins around, his reign does not receive a lot of attention from the majority of collectors, but there are some interesting numismatic testimonies on his coins. The majority of his pieces, and in particular the crude looking ones, come from the very end of his 15-year reign, roughly between 264 and 268 AD. But let's head back to the first years of his reign, when in fact you can still find coins of him and his father with pretty decent silver content and pretty good art. Let's head back to 254 AD, when Gallienus was raised as co-emperor by his father and tasked with the defense of the Western Empire, while Valerian would deal with the easternmost threats. As we can see here, by this year, the Antoninians still retain a bit of silver, a bit of dignity from all of its debasement, as it is still clearly silvery in color. This example was struck in the Mint of Rome, so let's have a look at it. On the obverse, we can see the typical side portrait of the emperor, wearing the radiate crown, indicating this coin was worth 2 denarii. The legends read, Imperator Caesar Publius Licinius Gallienus Augustus. The reverse is aimed at passing a message that Gallienus was chosen by Valerian, the senior emperor, not just because he was his son, but for his prowess as a general, which in fact Gallienus would prove to be true. We see Virtus, the incarnation of manliness and virility, wearing full battle armor, holding a spear and a shield, and the legends Virtus Augustorum, so the virtue of the Augusti. Notice how it says Augustorum with 2 G's instead of only one. This indicates it's a plural, so 2 emperors are in power. But what about his father? I would be negligent not to show Emperor Valerian as well. Valerian also struck some pretty miserable coins later in his reign, but the earlier coins from closer to 253 AD tend to be the best looking ones, like this example also from 254 and also from the Mint of Rome. On the obverse, we see the middle-aged bust of Valerian, in contrast to the very young bust of Gallienus, as he was around 55 at the time, also wearing the radiate crown. The legends show us Valerian's full name, as well as his imperial positions, so Imperator Caesar Publius Licinius Valerianus Augustus. The reverse on his coin is a nice little nudge toward his troops. Valerian himself came to power through a series of betrayals and internal conflicts between the previous emperor and a series of usurpers in classical 3rd century style. So he wanted to make a clear statement that he was, finally, the uncontested chief of the military. We read Fides Militum, the fidelity of the army, and we can see Fides herself, the fidelity incarnate, holding 2 military standards, the standards that the Roman soldiers would carry into battle to identify their units among the rest of the army. Unfortunately, Gallienus would soon become sole emperor, as Valerian would be captured by Shapur, the Sassanian king, in 260 at the Battle of Edessa, and poor Gallienus would see himself in a very tight spot. For our next coin, we are heading back to Gallienus, as he was actually doing a reasonably decent job defending the rest of the empire. This next piece was struck around 259 in Lugdunum, modern-day Lyon, so right before Valerian's capture and the train wreck that would be the next decade. I have recently acquired this piece, so I'm actually a little bit excited about it. It is quite interesting. It has this very different style from what we've seen previously in the Roman mint. Gallienus seems to have quite a big neck, as well as a face with very gentle features in contrast to the very sharp facial features that are typical from the mint of Rome. Interestingly, here Gallienus is described as Sol Augustus. So we can read Gallienus Pius Felix Augustus with a single G. The reverse is a little bit faint. This is probably one of the main flaws from Roman coins of the 3rd century, as the reverse dies were used way past their prime, and many reverses are either very flat looking like this one, or horribly distorted, as engravers would pick up the reverse die, which was the one that used to wear a little bit quicker, and try to salvage them and re-sculpt it. But we can still make sense of all of the things going on in here. We can see the incarnation of victory. She's very cruel, stepping over a poor little captive, and the legends Victoria Germanica celebrates victory over all the Germanic tribes. But how did we go from silver coins of reasonable quality to such miserable little coins that are basically silver-plated copper like this one we're seeing now? Well, the time period when Gallienus reigned alone could very well be described as the perfect storm. The empire divided itself in three, with Postumus and his Gallic Empire taking Gaul, Hispania and Britannia to the west, Zenobia taking Palmyra and the far east. We had plagues, we still had barbarian pressures, and the situation was just everything was happening at the same time. And this completely collapsed the entire Roman economy, which was shaky already, ravaged by years of crisis, political instability, and internal wars, while expenditure on the military was still incredibly high, given the number of soldiers needed in such horrible times. The state simply had too much of a deficit, and back in that time, modern entities such as international banks or issuing bonds or any kind of device that a government could make to raise emergency funding wasn't really a thing. Cash was king, in a sense. You either had the money or you had not, and the only real way of increasing the total supply of money was through the distribution of the scarce amount of silver you had in your hands through more coins. So you would add less and less silver per coin in a process called debasement, which I've already discussed a couple of times in here. This process really took a dramatic shift between 264 and 268, when coins dropped to less than 5% silver content on them, as well as being reduced in overall weight. So let's take a look at one of these coins as an example. This is a piece from the year 264 AD, struck at the Mint of Rome. Notice the difference between this coin and the first two pieces from the video. This degradation in quality happened over a mere 10 years. This is a disaster. Not only the coin itself is much smaller and lighter, most of the time these coins don't even pass the 3 grams mark. The shape of it is very irregular. The only silver really left in it is this very spotty silvering you can see on the surface, these like slightly brighter parts, and they were also made in a rush, so no quality control was enforced to ensure the full design or the legends were imprinted on every coin. As you can see in here, we can barely make out the letters. But fortunately, I will draw the coin so you guys can make sense of it. On the obverse, we can see a much more simplified bust of Gallienus. Notice how the hair was replaced with just a series of wavy lines, and the beard is now just a set of small dots. These were churned by the multiple millions every week, so lots of dies had to be engraved in a rush, and there was simply no time for quality. The legends are also rather simple. Gallienus Augustus, Gallienus Emperor, straight to the point. The reverse features the incarnation of safety and security, something Gallienus desperately tried to give its people. We need to give poor Gallienus a break. He receives a lot of bad mentions and a lot of bad fame in history books, But if you study the situation of the time, and in particular the victories he actually managed to pull off, you realize he wasn't that terrible. So, our allegory here, she's seen holding a scepter, resting her hand over a column, and we see the legends, Securitas Perpetua, so the eternal security. Gallienus reigned over one of the darkest moments of Roman history, and he would suffer a sudden and violent end like many other emperors of the 3rd century. A sad man with a sad and unjust life and a sad and unjust end. But somehow, Rome would bounce back. After him, the empire would be blessed with a series of heroes that would pull it from its mere collapse and give it some 200 years of extra existence. But we will explore these remarkable individuals in another episode. So now I want to hear from you, collector. Have you got a coin from Gallienus? You probably have. Is it one of the earlier ones made of good silver or one of the late ones? Let us know in the comment section below. Also, consider leaving a like and subscribing if you haven't already. It really helps the channel. So I hope you all enjoyed, happy collecting, and see you soon.